Come again? You know I don't speak Spanish. In English, please. Huh? You pooped in the refrigerator.
Hello, Jedediah. Hello, Charlie. I didn't know we were speaking. Sure we're speaking, Jedediah. You're fired.
Pete, the personal rancor reflected in that remark I don't intend to dignify with comment. But I would like to address your general attitude of hopeless negativism.
Good. Well, if I'm careful, because the life you saved might be your own. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Mrs. Lippman's family.
Oh, I didn't think you'd see that. Hey, how are you? I'm Mark. I am the Cinemaniac. You watching probably dig flicks to some degree, so we are the titular Cinemaniacs, back again after a week away, a week or two away. Has it been 3 weeks? Has it been a month? I don't remember much these days, but we do have about 9 or so films to talk about, so I'm not going to jibber-jabber too much. I'd say hello to everybody who's watching live on Facebook. We do this show live on Facebook as we record it for broadcast everywhere else. So if I should say a cuss word or some things should go wrong that we edit out of the final program, you get to see it and retain it on Facebook. Another aspect of Facebook is that we don't have to take the trailers out. If you watch this show on YouTube, I have to take all the trailers out for copyright purposes. So anyway, moving along, we have 3 in the theater that we will talk about. First up is a sequel to a film from a couple years ago. Was it 5 years? Was it 10 years? Was it last year? I don't know. It was a while ago. This is a sequel to it. We have Angelina Jolie back again as the person you would think of as the Wicked Witch or the Wicked Queen or the Wicked person in Sleeping Beauty. We had a film called Maleficent. Don't roll it. We had a film called Maleficent a few years back, which was about the origin of this character and how she became involved with Sleeping Beauty and all that burning question everybody had on their minds. And it was a big hit. So naturally, money talks. And we have another film with the same characters. This time, we have the young princess, Sleeping Beautiful person who is now about to get married. And Maleficent has to sort of meet the parents, as it were, of her daughter's suitor in Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. That was a creepy dissolve there that people on YouTube won't see. So this is the follow-up to Maleficent, as I said, so it continues the story and it expands the world a little bit. In this film, you see, as the trailer gave away, would have been a great surprise. It was for me because I didn't watch the trailers for this film. We see other creatures from whence Maleficent came. So there is this whole culture of these winged, horned beasts, and they decide, much like a lot of other films, kind of reminded me of the X-Men in a way, they decide that they have been, pushed aside and suppressed by humanity long enough, and they're going to wage war against humanity. So, like every children's film, there are epic, large-scale battle sequences. The thing that really impressed me most about the original Maleficent, which was a fine film to me, it was okay, was how good it looked. Like, it's really well shot, and the effects are really interesting. I'm not much into fantasy films, which this kind of falls into the category of, but Jolie is captivating isn't the right word. She's kind of riveting in that character. The makeup and the practical, the applications of whatever, horns and wings and fangs and things, it's a very striking image. And she knows what she's doing acting-wise. So she's very good in this. You have Michelle Pfeiffer as the good queen, but maybe kind of evil queen at the same time. So you have the Battle of the Queens, which is not RuPaul's Drag Race, and you have the young lovers. And I don't really have anything too intelligent to say about this movie. Really, it looks really good. The drama is pretty cookie-cutter storybook drama. The battle sequences are relatively well done. The effects overall are really well done, and just the visuals. It has a really good look to it with just nice, bold colors. And when Maleficent does her evil magic and the bright green swirly stuff comes on, I'm a simple guy. It's a line from Boogie Nights. I won't say right now. But I thought this was, it was entertaining for what it was. For me, this was just a matinee of a film I didn't care about, and I thought it was well done. And I think if you liked the first film, you'd probably like this one again. There is the Mistress of Evil aspect of it. There is the lighter tones, the moments where Maleficent is socially awkward in humanity's circles and is being corrected by her sidekick, the crow guy, the Raven Man. That's pretty funny. There are some pretty funny moments in this too. So Maleficent, Mistress of Evil, fine for kids. Some, scenes of peril, as they say, that might be a little bothersome for little kids. But toughen up the tykes. It's a harsh world out there. So speaking of toughening up the tykes, we have the sequel. Here's another sequel. It's sequel week here. We have another sequel to a popular film from, again, it could have been 5 years ago, it could have been 10, it could have been 20, I'm not sure. We have the sequel to Zombieland, don't roll the clip, and this has the same cast coming together again, continuing on the road of a post-zombie apocalypse America, cracking wise and smashing noggins and having a grand old time in Zombieland. Double tap. Very nice. Fun with video transitions. I am, again, a simple guy, and a little explosion or a little something silly that transitions from one scene to the next makes me smile, puts a smile on this mug. So, Zombieland. I wasn't a huge fan of the original Zombieland. It was very, very popular, obviously. Popular enough to get a sequel, Everybody Returns. And I thought it was fine. It was fun. It was just like this new film, it just makes me think of like if you did The Walking Dead, but you just jacked the pace up and you made it funny. So you have the same cast of characters coming back. You have Jesse Eisenberg, you have Woody Harrelson, Emma Stone, Abigail Breslin. Who else is in this thing? Then they're joined by Rosario Dawson and Luke Wilson and a couple other cameos here and there. And it's just this forced family of people who've come together trying to survive, working their way across the country. So again, I didn't think the first one was all that great. It was fine, but I didn't love it. And the second one was a good time. Like, I went into this really not caring at all, and I had a good time with this. It was very funny throughout. It's very gory throughout. The action's pretty well rendered, and it was quirky and fun. And there's not much more than that to say about it. The people they meet along the way are interesting. It has a strong Elvis subplot that I don't remember the original having, but then again, I don't remember the original. Woody Harrelson is a big Elvis fan, and they work their way to Memphis at some point, and that's where he meets Rosario Dawson, who runs an Elvis-themed motel. And I was impressed that when Woody, and it might have been for financial and music licensing reasons, but when Woody Harrelson sits down at a piano and he plays an Elvis song, he does Never Been to Spain, which most people wouldn't know. Most people, you would think they would put a really well-known go-to Elvis song in it. But Never Been to Spain was one that Elvis did live for years when he was touring in the 70s. And if you know Elvis and you like his live material, you know that song. So it made me smile when they did that. And there were a couple other little Elvis isms in there. They also did the thank you very much, which makes you want to punch anybody who does it because it's really hack. But, I guess you have to do that if people don't know it's Elvis. So it was a fun movie. It was really well executed. It had the drug stuff in it again, which I didn't like about the first one and I didn't like here because it felt forced. It wasn't funny. It didn't add anything. It felt like I don't know why that was in there. It was just this throwaway thing. It's like somebody suddenly speaking Esperanto when they walk through a scene. It's like, well, that's a thing, but it doesn't really have anything to do with everything else that's going on here. I would say if you like the first film and if you like this film, stay a little bit into the credits. There may have been a post-credits gag, which I didn't hang around for, but the credits roll for a little bit, and then you get a good sizable scene that ties back to the previous film and will probably make some people very happy. I thought it was just okay. I thought it went on a little bit too long and wasn't terribly funny for me, but I know some friends really liked it, and if you are a fan of the person who is featured in this little extra scene, I think you'll have a good time. And again, chemistry with the cast is really good. It's really well shot. It's a really, again, I didn't really love it that much, but I can see how somebody would really dig this if you like the first one. And I don't even know that you necessarily have to have seen the first one to get anything out of Zombieland Double Tap, because it sets up who people are pretty quickly. It hits the ground running almost quite literally pretty quickly. And it's just a fast, fun, good October kind of movie. So that's in theaters right now. And what is the next thing? Oh, this is also in theaters too. So we swing on over here. Excellently done. We have the new film by Ang Lee. Ang Lee, who gave you great films in the past, not including The Incredible Hulk. Well, when you think about the great films of Ang Lee and you think about The Incredible Hulk, just near in the neighborhood of or on the shelf on the outbox next to The Incredible Hulk, you're going to probably put this movie. Will Smith stars as a government hitman who stumbles upon a younger version of himself and is mystified as to what is this, what's going on, and why is a younger me trying to kill me in a little film called, not to be confused with an old TV movie, The Gemini Man. So this is one of those films where if there was some way to advertise this and get butts in seats and not reveal what the big ism, what the big thing in this movie is, it would blow your mind. But you go in knowing this is going to happen, which of course you do with every film, because most people who are normal and intelligent don't want to shell out, 10, 15, 20 bucks to see something that they don't know what it's going to be about. So we have Will Smith as this assassin, and he's out, man, I'm out. And he's set upon by assassins, or an assassin, who turns out to be a younger version of himself. So then there's this mystery of who is this younger version of himself, how did this come to be, what's going on and why, and intrigue and light sci-fi ensues amongst the action. I thought this was kind of bad. This is kind of not good. Part of it is the effects. CG is really outstanding when it's used to accent something or to enhance something, but so often CG just takes me out of the movie. And I gotta say, I have all the respect in the world for Hollywood stunt people in doing what they do and risking their lives for what they do. And visual effects have taken some of that away from them. It's made it a lot safer for them, but it's also taken away a lot of the wow, to me, of stunt scenes and action sequences. And there's a motorcycle chase in this film, which to a degree is kind of cool. But then you have the younger Will Smith character on his motorcycle, and it's clearly, to me, CGI. And I feel like I'm watching a video game. Like, it's the motorcycle jumping off a ramp that's 4 feet tall and landing on the ground, and it doesn't look like it's really there. And I'm like, seriously? You couldn't get a guy to jump, or lady, to jump off a motorcycle onto, it's not even death-defying. It's physics. It doesn't look real. Beyond that, so there's some fight sequences where I feel like I'm watching a video game, and I don't like watching video games any much more than I like playing them. And then there's the sequences where you see the younger Will Smith, which instills, and if he's not talking, is pretty convincingly a younger Will Smith. But then he starts to move his mouth, and it just doesn't look real. The lips don't match. It looks like it's dubbed. It's that floaty CGI thing, and it's just like, dudes, the tech isn't there. Don't build a movie around technology that isn't there and is distracting. And I hate to tell you this because I think, farther out on things, the more time passes, the worse this is going to look. So it's really hard to watch this movie every time you see the younger Will Smith, and he just doesn't, it looks like kind of like a cartoon. A pretty realistic cartoon, but still, it's not quite there yet. Beyond that, the drama is pretty heavy-handed. There's, my issue with faux Americans. I love the British. I love the Australians. They're fine people and they're fine actors, and I love their AV content. But there's this thing that's been going on the last 10, 20 years where every movie, every TV show has to have somebody who's British or Australian playing an American, which is not in and of itself a bad thing, but I can always hear the accent. I can always hear them curling their R's and saying words weird, and it takes me out of the movie. And when I see Clive Owen show up and I know he's British, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm crazy. But watching this movie, even actors I didn't know, I'm like, this is supposed to be the American CIA, and like every one of these actors is clearly British. Did they shoot this in England? What's so hard about getting, I don't know. Anyway, I didn't think The Gemini Man was very good. One thing I will say about this, it is kind of a sci-fi thing. It's kind of an action thing. It's pretty heavy-handed drama and trying to be touchy-feely and all that. Apparently, there's a way you can see this in 3D and high frame rate. 120 frames a second, I guess, which some people say gives it that soap opera look that people do when they don't know how to set up their TVs. Some people said they saw it that way, and it's really interesting to see it that way. A friend of mine saw this in 3D and said it was maybe some of the best 3D he's seen. So it might be worth checking out if you have, like my pal did, AMC A-List, or if you're willing to throw a little money at a movie that might not be that great. Apparently the 3D is really good. And I did think when I was watching the movie, I just saw it flat 2D. I don't know that 3D was an option where I saw it. When I saw this, I kept thinking, wow, this might look kind of cool in 3D. All of these tracking shots and aerials and moving through environments, that might actually be kind of more interesting in 3D. And I used to say when I was seeing things in 3D regularly, because I didn't have to pay for it, that a lot of times 3D would give depth to a movie that did not have any dramatically. So it could be, if you have the chance to see Gemini Man, if you're on the fence, if you're interested, if you want to see the technology, if you want to see how cartoony young Will Smith's lips look, I would say try the 3D or the high frame rate, because it may give you an experience that is at least more interesting than the film or interesting in general. Speaking of interesting, we live in an interesting world now involving film distribution and channels of how you see things. It's been like this for a while. There's been multiple ways to see movies, but this is kind of interesting. So you've heard of Netflix, right? That's that thing where you spend money and every month they send you DVDs in the mail. I hear you can get it through the internet too, and maybe even watch them on your TV without a DVD. So Netflix is producing original content. They've been doing it for a while. They've been doing TV specials, comedy specials, miniseries, documentaries, series, movies, whatever. And until now, they rarely got shown in theaters. But you're seeing this happening more and more. You're seeing Amazon studios create films and put them into theaters, either simultaneously with their Amazon Prime release or just before. And then I think Roma was a film that came out and was Oscar nominated and I won a lot of awards, maybe even won an Oscar. I don't remember. I don't pay attention to that stuff. But that was an Amazon production that went into theaters. And now Netflix is doing the same. Sometimes it's just a one weekend only, some it's a one night only, and some it's an actual theatrical run. So the next two things I'm going to talk about are available on Netflix right now. So this is, as we were discussing earlier, this is kind of a theatrical review of how I saw it, but it's also a video review because you can turn me off, which I highly recommend, and just flip over and watch these movies right now. So first up is, let me make sure it's doing the right one. Okay, yes. Hi, how are you? Doing okay? Good. So we have a film starring Eddie Murphy. Just got to make sure I'm doing this in the right order. We have a film starring Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray Moore, who you probably haven't heard of. He was a black comedian in the 70s, was when he grew to prominence as much as he did as far as mainstream culture went, who made filthy party albums, under the counter at the liquor store albums. You couldn't advertise them albums because they were filthy and they were crude and they were pretty darn funny. Then he went for the big time and he made a movie. He made a few movies actually. And the first of which is the film that this film revolves around. This tells the story of Rudy Ray Moore and how he and his oddball band of friends and comrades got together and made a film called Dolemite. This film is called Dolemite Is My Name. Okay, I had the distinct pleasure of seeing this in the movie theater. It's in theaters. It's actually much wider than I thought. I thought this was a New York LA thing. I saw it in New York, but apparently this is playing all over the place. Not wide, but a lot of places are showing this. I highly, highly, highly recommend going to see this. This was funny as hell. I was laughing out loud maybe 2 minutes into this movie. And you hate to make proclamations like this because you sound like a hack, but damn, Eddie Murphy is back. He is funny in this, and he's good with the drama in this, which, a lot of comedians go both ways, acting-wise. And Eddie Murphy is really good in this. This is from the writers of Ed Wood, and it really is kind of Ed Wood again. It's kind of Ed Wood and Boogie Nights, and there was a movie that's quite good called Badass from a few years ago that Mario Van Peebles made, and it's about his father Melvin Van Peebles making Sweet Sweetback's Badass song, and it's a pretty good little movie, little drama about the making of that film. This is like a comedic version of that. It's a band of misfits who get together and half-ass their way through a movie that ultimately becomes a cult favorite. So you have Eddie Murphy as Rudy Ray Moore, who's this guy who's not really succeeding in life. He's working in a record store, decides to become a comedian by just aping these traditional African culture stories that have gone back through the ages, just through generations of these folk tales, and he turns it into a comedy act, and he finds success with that. And the main character he does sort of on stage, Dolemite, he decides to build a film around, and he puts this weird group of people together, and they just somehow complete, more or less, a film. And this film is set in the early 70s, and it's got the look, and it's got the music, and it's got the style, and boy howdy is it fun to watch. And you go through the tribulations of somebody who's, again, it's just like Ed Wood. Somebody who has heart and a drive to succeed, and it's sort of an American dream story. Somebody who's coming from nothing and becomes something. Even if that something is not necessarily rich and famous, they've achieved their goal in some way. And it's a very positive story. It's a lot of laughs. This is really funny. And it's really filthy, because if you don't know Rudy Ray Moore, he made his mark, hi, it's me, on coarse humor, shall we say. Very coarse humor, coarse language, coarse subject matter. And there's a lot of that in the movie. There's a little nudity here and there, and the violence is all, bad special effects violence. But verbally, it's quite an R-rated film that we have here. And boy, I could go on and on about this. I would probably just keep repeating myself. It's on Netflix right now. It's in theaters. I would recommend seeing it in the theater because this is relatively well shot and the music is great. Now, yes, you have a big screen TV at home, and yes, you have your surround sound system. It's not the same as seeing it in the theater, despite what you may think. I went somewhere that was what is billed, I believe, as a luxury theater, an IPIC theater in New York, which I'd never experienced before. It was really, really interesting. Really interesting, really luxurious, and it made the experience even more fun. But it was a pretty crowded theater that I saw this in, and everybody was laughing quite a bit. So I love Dolemite Is My Name. I'm going to buy Dolemite Is My Name. I will say, if you've never heard of Rudy Ray Moore or Dolemite, little sub-recommendation is to rent the movie Dolemite or buy the movie Dolemite. Vinegar Syndrome, a company I love in Connecticut, they have all the Rudy Ray Moore films, or all the ones that are well-known, out on Blu-ray. You have Dolemite, you have Human Tornado, which is the follow-up to that. You have Petey Rietstraw, The Devil's Son-in-Law, and Disco Godfather. They're fantastic. They're bad, they're funny, they're intentionally funny, they're ridiculous, and I think you can enjoy Dolemite Is My Name if you've never seen the movie Dolemite, but I think if you have seen Dolemite, you get a little bit more behind the scenes and you get a little bit more poking fun at how cheesy and awful that movie is. It's cheesy and it's awful, but it's wonderful, and it's you know, say what you will about it. People are still watching it and talking about it, and they're making a movie about the making of it like 40 years later. So they did something right. So that's Dolemite Is My Name. Speaking of, hi, how are you? Rest. Speaking of Netflix movies, this is interesting. So this is a film that is a sequel to the Breaking Bad TV series that went 5 seasons over the course of several years ago. And this is a feature film, basically, again, made for Netflix, so probably really kind of a TV movie that is in theaters right now. I think this is also very limited release. I saw this at Alamo Drafthouse Yonkers, where it, I believe, is still playing. This is the kind of thing where if you really want to see this in the theater, if you want the kick of seeing a follow-up or the final episode, let's say, of a show you loved on the big screen, I would say do it soon, because once a couple movies come out that are coming along, this is going to get pushed out. I think this theatrical release is really kind of more of a promotional thing for Netflix than anything else. We have, what's his name, because I don't really know. We have Aaron Paul. He was in that terrible Need for Speed movie. Aaron Paul resumes his character from Breaking Bad, and we see where Jesse has gone since the last episode of that series in El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie. So I never watched Breaking Bad. That was a show that, when it first came on, didn't really appeal to me, and then when it started, when I couldn't escape how many people were telling me that I needed to watch it, I was always like, I'll put it on the list. And then it ended. So I knew that I was going to see this movie in a theater. A friend of mine asked me, well, more than a friend, asked me if I wanted to go see this when it was going to play the Alamo. And I said, yeah, but I haven't watched the show. And the question was, how fast can you watch 5 seasons of Breaking Bad? And the answer is not fast enough. So I got up to the season 3 or 4, and that's as far as I got. So I went into this movie. I told you that story to tell you this one. I went into this movie with about 3 seasons worth of knowledge of the basic premise of the show and who the characters are and sort of where the storyline went. I kind of know how the series ended because it's hard to avoid big spoilers on big things like that, but I'm most of the way through the show. So I'm speaking about this film as somebody who maybe didn't really know the show very well. So this film, I'm told, picks up a little bit after the final episode of the Breaking Bad series, where we have the Jesse character, who is one of the 2 leads. He is imprisoned by bad guys, and he is fighting for his survival for however much longer that's going to last. He busts out of that, and basically this film is, we see him on the run trying to survive. He's desperate. It's a ticking clock, as screenwriting books will tell you need to have. And he is trying to get his act together in order to get out and get away from the bad guys. As a crime drama, this works really, really well. It's a great cast. It is a lot of people from the show. Robert Forster is in it. I don't know if this is going to be seen as his last film role, but he's got a good part in this. Like, it's great to see him. It was great to see him on the big screen just, within a week of when he died. But it's always great to see Robert Forster on the big screen. And in this, he is just this great character. And he is Robert Forster to the max. And I'm glad it was more than just a simple cameo. And he's really well utilized, and that was great. It's very small cast in the film, and it's gritty. It's very funny, funnier than I expected it would be. But then again, Breaking Bad was funnier than I expected it would be. You're in these really grim life or death situations, and then something happens that's just darkly funny, and we get that throughout. The film really is more or less a feature-length episode of the show. A lot of times when you go and do a feature film like made for theaters, adaptation or sequel or continuation of a TV series, you feel like it needs to be grander on some scale. It needs to be 500 Mack trucks coming down into the rim to save the good guys, or it needs to be space adventure or world globetrotting kind of adventure. And this really isn't. This isn't any grander in scope than your average Breaking Bad episode. It's longer in length, double the length of an episode. Written and directed by Vince Gilligan, who did the original show, so you know it's legit. It's not like somebody else picked it up and ran in a weird direction with it. And it's really it's a gritty crime tale. I think you probably would do okay with this movie if you hadn't watched the show. I think you'd care less about the characters, but I think it's easy enough to follow. There were some things referenced that I had to ask about afterwards to get a little bit more of a picture, but just as somebody who was vaguely aware of these people and who they are, the film worked great for me. I thought it was quite good. Again, as a movie that stands by itself, it's hard for me to judge because I have watched the show. If you just pulled somebody off the street and said, here, he's a free movie, I think they would probably like it, but they may wonder why they care about the main character. I think that's something that you are bringing, if you've watched the program, to this experience, as opposed to if you're just watching a movie with these characters you've never heard of. It's very interesting, the character arcs. I'm not really going to review Breaking Bad, the show, but the character arcs that went on over the course of that series, you basically get a resolution for the Jesse character. You get a resolution for one of those main characters in this film that I think fans of the show are probably looking for, and you see a little bit more of some characters that were bit players on the show. So at any rate, I thought El Camino was quite good. Now, most people who are fans of Breaking Bad are probably just going to dial this up on Netflix and have already watched it. And I think I don't know if it's necessarily, well, I guess probably it is a satisfying conclusion to the series, because it's one of those things where I felt like when I walked out, my thought was, it's inconsequential, but it was really well done. So it gives you a little bit more time spent with characters that you like, and it ties up some ends for some characters that were left, unanswered when Breaking Bad ended. I don't know, who knows if there'll be any more of these films. They probably could make more if they really wanted to, but this seems like not a last gasp, but it seems like one more trip to the well, and the water hasn't gone bad yet. Unlike the Rambo series, where there was one too many trips to the well. So that's all that is on in theaters right now, and I usually say now we move on to home video, but the last two titles kind of were home video because you can watch them on Netflix, which is what home video is now. Now we move on to that which you can see on the streaming service or platform or format or implant or mail order of your choice. First up, nicely done. How are you? First up is a creepy crawly creature flick just in time for the holiday. This is the story of a woman who goes to check on her father, who has been incapacitated in his home as a hurricane or a tornado or a typhoon or a monsoon or a sale at Penny's is coming along to eradicate their Florida town. She and he get trapped in the basement with the water ever rising, and wouldn't you know that it's full of alligators. And they're hungry and perturbed. This is a film called Crawl. I do have to warn you, as you may have just noticed in that trailer, yes, there's graphic violence and disembowelings. Yes, there's child endangerment, but perhaps worst of all, there's coarse language in this film. So this is from Alexandre Aja, who did the film High Tension, or Haute Tension, and he did the Hills Have Eyes remake, and he did the Piranha remake, and he's done a lot of horror stuff here and there. And this is a solid, efficient, killing machine. I had a really good time with this. It's nothing grand, it's nothing important, it's nothing ingenious, but it's a very tightly done thriller. It's woman versus nature. It's probably 80 minutes. It's not very long. It delivers on the chomping. It delivers on the tension. I mean, there's the whole, hey, there's a hurricane coming. We might be killed. And then it's, hey, we're trapped in a basement where the water's running. We might be killed. And then it's, hey, there are alligators. We're most likely going to be killed. And I thought it was really fun. It's well shot. It manages to convey tight spaces and tension without putting the camera up somebody's nose and shaking it a lot, which is apparently revolutionary these days. And it's no real stars. Barry Pepper's the only person you've probably seen before in this. And it's just a really good time. This is a solid Halloween rental. This is a solid rental anytime. And I say rental. Rental or dialing it up or clicking play or whatever you do. I thought Crawl was really quite good for what it is. And I really liked Aha's Piranha. I thought Piranha was a blast. So he's been doing pretty well in my book as far as these films go. It makes me want to see his Hills Have Eyes now because I never did. So we're short on time, so we're going to keep on boogieing here. On over here to, damn, you're good. We're going to have a film with, who is it? Who's in this thing again? Camille Nanjiani. and Dave Bautista, who you may know from Guardians of the Galaxy. And Bautista is this tough as nails cop who's on the trail of some bad guys, and don't you know his pupils get dilated, so he has to take an Uber somewhere, and that Uber winds up getting hijacked into being his partner, essentially, to pursue the perps in a little action comedy called Stuber. So this is one of those films. I start everything with so, don't I? So this is one of those films where I saw the trailer and I said, you know, one of the downsides of this show is that I have to watch movies like this, but one of the upsides of this show is I watch movies like this and I realize, wow, I really like this. I was really surprised how much I enjoyed Stuber. I thought it was really funny. Now the action, the action is typical American modern action, so it's a little on the shaky side. And this is an action comedy, so to me the action should, kind of be kind of decent too. It is very brutally violent at times. It is darkly, comedically brutally violent at times. Bautista is, he's an angry man who's barely contained, and Nanjiani is a very meek man who's in way over his head in this situation. I thought it was really funny. It moves right along. The characters are likable. Not that that's necessary for me entirely, but it helps. And it was a nice surprise. It was, mismatched couples, mismatched buddy comedy. We've seen a billion of these before, but once in a while one does it, and it doesn't do anything new with it, but it does something funny with it. So I would recommend Stuber as a pretty happy rental if you want. Again, keeping it short so that we can move on to the next film. Speaking of violence and profanity and nudity and adult situations, you will find none of them in the following film. This is Disney's live-action remake of a film that warmed the heart of a generation and changed filmmaking forever. Not really. This is The Lion King. I don't really get this whole Disney remaking all of their animated classics as live action. Some people like it, some people dig it. There's the idea that now kids can watch it. My idea is kids can watch the originals. They're animated. They're not dated. But and it's funny to call them live action remakes when in this case it's all CGI characters. I believe the backgrounds were actually live action, actual reality that was filmed, but the animals are all, it's my understanding, they're all CG creations. And for the most part, they look pretty darn real. We've come a long way. That was this is directed by Jon Favreau, who you may know from Swingers, or you may know as Happy in the Iron Man films. And he had directed the film that started this trend off, which was The Jungle Book from a few years ago. And I remember when I watched that, I felt like, wow, there were times those animals looked like they were just flat out real and not CG creations. So the animals look realistic in this, and they talk, and it's the exact same movie you saw however many years ago that it came out. It's pretty much identical to the original Lion King. It takes a couple twists and turns here. Some things are handled a little bit differently, but the same songs are in it. The same dialogue, for the most part, is in it. There's a very good voice cast in this film, but ultimately, I'd seen this already. Like, I'm watching this and I'm like, yeah, I remember. I've seen this already. And I just don't get excited about being served the same thing all over again. And it looks great and it's executed well. And I think if there had never been an animated film called The Lion King and this came out, people would this would be a beloved film. But for me, it was just like, yeah, I know. And beyond that, in animation, you can take a creature, you can take an animal that doesn't really talk in real life. Lions don't really talk in real life, unless is dialogue. And you can make them more animated, as it were. So there's a scene where one character is basically murdering another character or being really, really evil to another character, and they have all this expression in the animated version. In the live-action version, they don't, because animals don't have expressions like that. A lot of animals' faces are relatively expressionless, so all you have to go on is the dialogue. And to me, certain scenes, and yes, I'm comparing these two films, but certain scenes lack the punch they had in the original because you get this expressionless animal face saying the dialogue instead of the animated animal face, which could be very expressive and really sell the moment. And then it's gross at times, which is this belief that all kids' films have to have some kind of rectal or dung reference. That's check, that's got that in here. So I didn't really think too much of this. It was fine to me. A friend of mine is a major fan of The Lion King from when she was a kid, one of those, watched it on tape every day kind of things. And she thought it was fine, but she was upset at some of the changes. To me, if you're gonna remake a movie, why do the exact same thing? I say make it different or don't bother. Generally, I say don't bother. So anyway, it's fine for kids, obviously. It's fine for adults. It's fine. I just didn't think too much of The Lion King, and this is another one of those films, just like Aladdin, that popped into my head that I'm probably going to forget was ever remade in the first place. Okay, for the end of the show, let's see how much time we have left. We're going to go on to the Arrow Video Corner. We don't have a super anymore. We're going to swing on over, excellent, and just preamble this little piece. So speaking of family films, speaking of films involving the family and the hearth and the clergy, we have a film from Arrow Video from 1979, classy Italian film from 1979, starring Anita Ekberg, who you may know from Fellini's 8½. She stars as a nun with a drug problem in Killer Nun. To those who have just witnessed the, I'd like to say, class of the trailer involving murder, drug addiction, lesbianism, and other nefarious duties with nuns, you're welcome. This is a wonderfully sleazy film. This is a genre that has become known as nunsploitation. I love that I can talk about this on TV. This is a nunsploitation film with, it's very well made, very good cast. It's super sleazy, it's super cheesy. Basically, Anita Ekberg is this nun who works at a hospital and things are going strange. She is having a mental breakdown. She is experiencing untoward things with other nuns. She is addicted to drugs. She is treating the patients terribly, and murders start happening, and we don't know if she's committing them, if she's hallucinating them, or what's going on. So it's kind of a thriller, it's kind of a drama, and it's just totally sleazy. It's wonderful. So this is presented by Arrow Video, so it looks and sounds great. You have the choice of an original Italian language track with subtitles or the dubbed English track. I chose the dubbed mostly because I've seen these movies that way the whole time. They weren't done with sync sound anyway, and I'm really familiar with the voice cast, the voice dubbing companies who did these back then. It's the same voices you know. You see Aida Valley, who you'd know from Suspiria, is in this film. Chock full of extras. You've got two commentaries. You've got nunsploitation history. You've got history of this film. It is totally loaded, perhaps like a lot of the people who will watch this film. I really enjoyed Killer Nun a lot. It's sleazy, but it's intriguing, and it's kind of entertaining. It's wildly entertaining. What am I saying? I'm stumbling because I've been told that I'm running out of time. So we'll swing on over here. We'll swing on over there. Maybe we won't. We'll swing. We're all swinging. We're swingers. How are you doing? So I'll be back next week, probably talking about a lot more movies with a lot more time to talk about them. Until then, I am Mark. I am the Cinemaniac, and I will see you at the movies. Bye.